What imposter syndrome feels like. Welcome to the School of Self-Worth Live. I'm Sam Osborne, the Self-Worth Guy, and today we are talking about what imposter syndrome feels like. And if you remember one thing from today's video, it is imposter syndrome feels like a cage, a mask, and a coin. Imposter syndrome feels like you are in a cage, wearing a mask, and flipping a coin. And I'm going to go into those three things in just a moment. So what everybody knows, if you do a little bit of research on imposter syndrome feels like you doubt your abilities, you doubt your intellectual ability, and you feel like you're a fake and that people are probably going to find out. That's what it feels like. And there can be a lot of anxiety around that. And even though you might be successful, even though you have a lifetime of accomplishments, people can still feel like a fake and a phony or an imposter. That's why it's called the imposter phenomenon. But today I'm going to talk about what imposter syndrome feels like metaphorically. And that's why I talk about imposter syndrome feels like you are trapped in a cage, wearing a mask, and flipping a coin. Let me explain what I mean. So let's start with the cage. Imposter syndrome feels like you are trapped in a cage. It does, doesn't it? Like there's a part of you inside you who is kind of hiding and trapped from being seen in the real world. It's almost, imposter syndrome feels like you can't express your authentic self, or that your authentic self is inside and on the outside there's this thin veil of fakeness, and you're putting on a face for the world. We'll get to mask in a minute, but imposter syndrome is like being trapped in a cage, and you don't feel like you can make any progress on it. You can't shake it. You can't get out of it. And the funny thing, I say imposter syndrome feels like a cage, but the cage door is not that secure. And in fact, there is a way out of imposter syndrome, and you kind of have to face your fears. That's going through the door. So the door of the cage is actually open, but a lot of people don't want to step outside the cage or their comfort zone, because of, if you're outside the cage, maybe there are scarier things out there than the feeling of being trapped in a cage. So imposter syndrome feels like being trapped in a cage. The second way imposter syndrome feels like is that you're wearing a mask inside that cage. And I want you to think of the traditional Greek actor's mask, you know, the white mask. And when you have imposter syndrome, it feels like you are wearing a mask, and that you have to put on a face, a brave, happy face. Excuse me. It feels like you have to present a false self to the world. And underneath the mask is your real self, who is probably feeling a little bit afraid to show who they really are. They're your authentic self. And that's why I say imposter syndrome feels like you are wearing a mask. The third thing is that imposter syndrome is flipping a coin. Excuse me. Imposter syndrome is like flipping a coin while wearing a mask, while being trapped in a cage. And I say flipping a coin because imposter syndrome is a coin, and it has two sides. On one side, imposter syndrome, if you look at this coin, it's the side of life, it's the side of your mind that criticizes you, that doubts yourself, that focuses on the negative aspects, that exaggerates things that are actually small things, right? It is looking at your faults, your defects, and thinking that is all you are, and that everybody is going to find out about that side of you. So that's why I say imposter syndrome is a coin. But if you flip the coin, it's the opposite. It's your authentic self. It's your genuine self. It's your, let us say, the version of you that you would love to be able to express out into the world, but you have a little bit of fear around that. So that's why I say imposter syndrome is a coin, okay? So don't just look at one side of the coin. Appreciate that side and say, thank you, imposter syndrome, for bringing to my attention all the reasons why I should be humble and be human, and it's okay to make mistakes, and things don't have to be perfect. But if you flip the coin, that other side of your mind, the authentic self, is going to say, words of encouragement. It's going to show you that it's okay to give yourself permission, to give yourself validation, to go out into the world and be who you want to be, and to acknowledge your own capabilities, your own skill level, your own intellectual knowledge, your ability to do the role that you probably got the job for. And I want you to look at both sides of the coin of imposter syndrome. All right, let's do a summary. Imposter syndrome feels like being stuck in a cage, wearing a mask, and flipping a coin. And if you've enjoyed this episode, I've got a free gift for you. It's called Crush Imposter Syndrome Forever, the starter kit for bulletproof confidence. And you can get it at the links above on Facebook and LinkedIn, and below on YouTube, or in the Spotify description if you're listening. And I'll also put it on the screen right now for you. You can go to samosborne.com/starter kit. And I invite you to join the School of Self-Worth Facebook group. Come and say hi. That's the best place to get hold of me and ask your questions about imposter syndrome, self-worth, self-esteem, authentic self. Would love to hear from you. All right. If you remember one thing from today's video, it is imposter syndrome feels like being trapped in a cage, wearing a mask, and flipping a coin. Have a great day, everybody. Bye.